Hi everyone, I'm Reshma and I'll be talking about intermittent fasting, a fad or a fix. You must have heard this idiom, you are what you eat. It doesn't mean the literal sense but signifies the importance of nutrition in the overall fitness of an individual. In India, studies indicate that there will be a jump in lifestyle related disorders in the coming years. With increased research and awareness, there is introduction of different types of diets to combat the problem. Among them is the popular intermittent fasting or IF. A simple Google search would give you many articles with contrasting views. The question is to fast or not to fast. Our study aims to provide more clarity to this dilemma. We use fruit flies or Drosophila for our studies. For non biologists, they might just be pesky insects hovering around fruits. But these creatures are more similar to us than we think, with nearly 70% common disease related genes between Drosophila and humans. So we developed an intermittent fasting regime wherein these flies, called train flies, were fed for 6 hours followed by 18 hours of starvation. The comparison was against the flies that were constantly kept in food condition, and after 12 days, we observed the metabolic effects of IF. We show that flies that have undergone IF they survive for a longer period of time under starvation in comparison to their fed counterparts. What about energy reserves, you ask? We found that during starvation, the trained flies they utilize lesser lipid or fat stores in comparison to the fed flies. In addition, we also show that the trained flies have larger lipid droplets as opposed to the fed flies. Similarly, with glycogen, we could show that the glycogen stores are utilized slowly in the trained flies in comparison to the fed flies. Overall, our results show that IF caused the flies to judiciously utilize their resources and thus become more metabolically thrifty. But the question still remains, how does this happen? One of the major pathways that responds to nutrition is the insulin signaling pathway, and the insulin like molecules in Drosophila are called as DILPs. Of this, DILP2 has the most similarity, but instead of the pancreatic cells, it is released by neurons. When we looked at the DILP2 levels in these neurons, we saw that there is lesser release and more accumulation of DILP2 in the trained flies in comparison to the fed flies. We also found that blocking the insulin production or release from the brain or the insulin signaling in the peripheral tissue results in the abolishment of the increased starvation resistance that was associated with these trained flies. Therefore, we show insulin signaling is important for IF related effects. Now, coming back to the question, to fast or not to fast? With research still ongoing, it might be safe to say to take it with a grain of salt, but also consider the individualistic differences. Finally, don't forget that moderation is the key.